Good morning, children. In our previous class, we have discussed on the nature of force. Hope that you have revised that topic. Today, we are going to learn about contact forces. In our previous class, we have discussed on the interaction between two bodies. Whenever any two bodies interact, each one of them applies force to the other. But how do the bodies interact? Interaction between the bodies can be basically of two types. One in which the bodies are in contact with each other, and the other in which they are not in contact with each other. The forces that result when the bodies are in contact with each other are called contact forces, and the forces that result between the bodies when the bodies are not in contact are called non-contact forces. Today we will talk about contact forces. Suppose that you are thirsty and there is a glass full of water is lying on the table. In order to drink some water from the glass, what will you do? Yes, you will lift that glass towards your mouth. That is, you will apply force on that glass. How are you applying the force? You are touching the glass with your hand and lifting it. Here your hand is in contact with the glass. So we can say that the force you are applying on the glass is a contact force. Let us see another example. This player wants to pass this football towards his teammate who is standing on the other side of the pitch. The player will apply force on the ball by kicking it. When the player applies force, his foot is in contact with the ball. So this force is a contact force. Other examples of contact forces can be pushing or pulling the desk from one point to another point. Here our hands are in contact with the desk. Similarly, pressing the keys on the keyboard, moving a piece on chessboard are some of the other examples in which parts of the body are in contact with the object and applying force on them. In all these examples that we have seen now, it is the parts of the human body that are in contact with the objects. Forces generated due to our body being in contact with the object are called muscular forces. The muscles in our body expand and contract when we apply force on objects. Animals also use muscular force to carry out their physical activities. For example, a bullock cart is used to carry loads from one point to another. Bullock is tied with the cart and the load is then added on to the cart. the bullock then applies muscular force on the cart and moves it forward. So we can say that muscular force is a contact force. Then what is muscular force? Yes, force that comes into play by the action of muscle. Is there any other contact forces other than muscular force? Yes, there is. It is the force of friction. What is force of friction? Let's see. Push a ball on a level surface. What do you notice? You noticed that the ball gradually slows down after some time and finally comes to rest. Why does this happen? Why doesn't the ball continue to move in the same direction forever? The reason for it slowing down and ultimately stopping is the force that the surface applies on the ball when it is moving. Yes, the surface applies the force on the ball and the direction of this force is opposite to that of the motion. So when the ball was traveling towards right, the surface was applying force on it towards the left. Here the force applied by the surface is called the force of friction. So force of friction is the force that opposes the motion of an object. Friction plays quite an important role in our daily life. We can walk and run because of this frictional force. How does it help us walk? When we walk forward, we push the ground with our foot in the backward direction. In return, the ground exerts a force in the forward direction, which moves us forward. The force that the ground exerts is nothing but the frictional force. The examples that we have seen now are one in which the frictional force exists between solid objects. Now consider a boat moving in a quiet lake. In order for this boat to move, the person in the boat must continuously row it. Now, if he stops rowing, will the boat move forward? No. Just like the rolling ball stopped at the solid surface, this boat will also stop eventually in water. It stops because of the force of friction between the water and the surface of the boat, which is in contact with the water. So from all these examples that we have seen here, what can you conclude about the force of friction? Is it a contact force? In the first example, we saw the ball was in contact with the ground. In the second example, the foot was in contact with the ground. And finally, the board was in contact with the surface of the water. So we can say that force of friction is indeed a contact force. So let's conclude today's topic. Contact forces. Contact forces are the forces that act between the objects when the objects are in contact with each other. The two types of contact forces are muscular force and frictional force. The force that comes into play by the action of muscle is called muscular force, and frictional force is the force that opposes the motion of an object.